If you leave my daughter, I'll give you $15 million. Choose now, my daughter or $15 million. On my way back from work, I helped a homeless woman who was in rough shape near my apartment. I couldn't just abandon her when she was dirty and hungry, so I took her to my apartment and offered her food and a place to sleep. However, one day, a man claiming to be her father showed up. "Who are you? What are you planning to do with my daughter?" After the woman explained the situation and cleared up the misunderstanding, her father said, "Choose now, my daughter or $15 million. And what I chose was, "I'm Ray. I graduated from a decent college and just started my job at 23. By the way, I don't have a girlfriend. I'm also a lonely guy whose age matches the number of years without a girlfriend. Ah, I wish I had a girlfriend." This phrase has become almost a catchphrase for me, but as a new employee, my top priority should be mastering my job first. That day, I was visiting a real estate company. My job is not so far from my parents' house that I can't commute, but the 2-hour travel time is a bit tough. What I realized after starting to work is that I'd prefer to sleep even 1 minute longer if I could. My top priority is sleep, followed by food. Considering the money saved on commuting could be used for rent, I decided it was worth it. With that in mind, I looked for an apartment that would at least shelter me from the wind and rain and was close to work. I chose a studio apartment that looks quite shabby from the outside. But the inside was renovated, and it even had a bathtub. Still, it's an old, shabby apartment. But for a single guy, that's just good enough. I didn't mind too much and have been living there for almost 6 months now. I've finally gotten used to the job, and despite being busy, I was having fulfilling days. One day, when I had to work late, which was unusual for a non-peak period, I was walking back home down a dark path. I heard a rustling noise. I stopped and listened closely. It seemed to be coming from the bushes nearby. This area isn't quite the city center, but it's not rural enough for foxes. The wind wasn't strong enough to rustle the bushes, so something must have touched them. Is it a stray dog or cat? It was my first thought, but then I imagined something scarier. What if it's a weirdo? Not to brag, but I'm not confident in fighting at all. Still, I held my bag like a shield and focused on the bushes. Then, I heard a louder rustling noise. The next moment, something big fell out of the bushes. Huh? A person? I let out a pathetic cry and took a step back, but upon closer inspection, it seemed to be a human. A human? It's even a woman? Thank goodness. At least it didn't seem to be a weirdo. She was dirty and her hair was messy, with what looked like twigs stuck in it. I felt bad, but I stared at her closely. Her face was dirty, and her hair was greasy, clearly unwashed for a while. Her hair was tied back haphazardly, but there was no getting around the unclean impression. And she was extremely thin. Even the women in my department who are on diets aren't this thin. Are you okay? This woman might be homeless. I don't want to get involved in anything troublesome. I said a few words to her and was about to leave. But after taking a few steps, I thought to myself, I would be leaving a person who collapsed right in front of me. Would I regret this later? Would I feel guilty? Before I knew it, I was kneeling beside her, helping her up. The woman looked at me with wide eyes and started to cry. Seeing her tears, I felt a strange, captivating sensation. Can you stand up? I'm sorry. It's very embarrassing to ask a stranger this, but, yes? Could you please give me something to eat? I was quite surprised by her request. I thought she was thin, but it seemed she hadn't been dieting by choice, she hadn't been eating properly. There must be some reason. From our brief conversation, she didn't seem like a scammer or a bad person. After some hesitation, I decided to take her to my apartment. Unfortunately, I didn't have any food with me, and I didn't think giving her money was a good idea. Please, make yourself at home. Thank you. In my not-so-clean apartment, the woman hesitated before sitting on the sofa. I handed her some lightly toasted bread I had bought for breakfast and a glass of orange juice. She looked up at me, and when I said go ahead, she quickly devoured the food, clearly very hungry. I wondered if it would be enough, but I didn't think about cooking something else. After satisfying her hunger a little, she looked at me again and appreciated politely. Thank you for the meal. It was nothing. I will definitely repay you someday. I'm sorry to impose, but I should be going now. As she tried to leave, I instinctively stopped her. It was already late, and I didn't think it was right to send a woman out at this hour. It's already late, so you can stay here tonight. Ha! The bathroom is over there. I'm sorry it doesn't seem clean, but you can sleep here. But I can't impose any further. I wouldn't feel right letting you leave now and something happening to you. Stay here tonight, and we can figure things out tomorrow. She listened quietly, thought for a moment, and then said softly, "Okay?" She then nervously followed my suggestion and took a bath. In the meantime, I changed the bed sheets to fresh ones. I couldn't let her sleep on sheets I used, especially since it had been a while since I changed them. After enough time had passed, she came out of the bath. Oh! I was shocked and had a hard time hiding it. The woman, now clean, looked like a completely different person, beautiful and radiant. She sat on the sofa in the same spot and said something unexpected. "Thank you for saving my life. As a token of my gratitude, please do what you want with me." Honestly, her words did stir something in me. She was very beautiful, and the scent of soap was inviting. But that's not it. I didn't help this woman and offer her a bath and a place to sleep for that reason. I'm sorry. My actions seem to have caused a misunderstanding. Ha! I didn't mean it like that. I just couldn't abandon someone in need. With those words, I gently but firmly guided the surprised woman to the bed. Then, I wrapped myself in a blanket and slept in front of the bathroom. The next morning, I woke up to a pleasant smell. "Good morning." "What?" Startled by the greeting, I jumped up to see the woman I helped last night smiling awkwardly. "I'm sorry for using your kitchen without permission." It's okay, but, what?" "If you don't mind, I made breakfast." I looked at the table. Where there had been just bread and juice yesterday, now there was a soup and a sunny side up. I'm not proud of it, but I don't cook. In fact, I can't cook. The most I can do is make instant noodles or heat up ready meals in the microwave. This bread is... Oh, I found some in the fridge. With that, the woman quickly moved to set it on the table. For the first time since living alone, I had a homemade breakfast. After breakfast, the woman thanked me and tried to leave. I didn't know exactly why I was acting that way, but the words spilled out of my mouth easily. I hope this isn't rude, but do you have anywhere to go?" If you don't have anywhere to go, why not stay here until you figure things out?" The woman seemed surprised by my suggestion. "It's a small apartment and pretty cramped, but I'm out working during the day, so you can do as you like. If she turned out to be a bad person, she might take everything I own, but I don't have much in the way of savings. And I always carry my valuables with me. It's a kind offer, but I can't impose on you anymore." "Are you good at housework?" "Well, I'm fairly decent at it." "Then, could you help with the housework?" "I can't cook, and I'd appreciate more meals like the one you made." She smiled slightly at my words. "All right. I'll stay for a while, then." She accepted my offer and introduced herself as Emily. "Well, I'm off to work. Here, take this." "What's this?" "The spare key, some money for groceries, and some cash for any personal items you might need. If there's anything else, let me know when I get back." After making sure she had taken them, I said, "I'll be counting on you," and left for work. That night, when I returned home, I thought I entered the wrong apartment. The place was incredibly clean, and a heartwarming meal, though not luxurious, was prepared with the groceries she had bought. She had even prepared the bath. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I felt a sense of relief and comfort upon returning home. "Emily, can I ask why you were in that situation?" "Yes." Sitting across from each other, drinking coffee after dinner, I listened to Emily's story. "By the time I was aware of things, my father was gone. It was just my mother and me. But my mother was always in poor health and couldn't overexert herself, so we lived in poverty. When I first met her, I thought she might be extremely poor, but hearing this confirmed it. But my mother had to work to support us, so she pushed herself despite her health. Because she was working, I took over the housework. I've been cooking since I was in elementary school." "Since you were that young?" "Yes, so I'm good at budget cooking," Emily said, a little embarrassed but also proud. But then, her expression suddenly darkened. I wondered what was wrong, but the answer came immediately. But eventually, my mother collapsed. After 2 years of battling illness, she passed away a year ago. I was still in high school at the time. We were poor, so I attended school on a scholarship, but everything was at its limit. I could only imagine. Even in a normal household, losing a mother is a huge event. I managed to graduate from high school, but all that was left were debts. You used the money for your mother's medical bills? Yes. Fortunately or unfortunately, we owned a house, so it was sold to pay off the debt. But all our belongings were taken. And I was left with nothing. Losing all the memories with her only living relative, her mother, must have been unbearable. Even if it was unavoidable, the despair would be immeasurable. The only thing I managed to keep was my mother's grave, which is located in a shared place at a church. She told me that. After graduating high school, I worked part-time jobs, but with no relatives, I faced harassment from former colleagues. No matter how many times I changed jobs, it never stopped, and I couldn't hold a job for long. Why were they harassing you? Is it okay to ask? Yes. One of my colleagues liked Brian, the manager. Unfortunately, he confessed to me, and she saw it. Wow. That was a bad timing. Her insults were along those lines, so I think that was the reason. No matter where I worked, she found me and harassed me. Because of that, I couldn't work in customer service. Even working behind the scenes, rumors spread quickly, and I kept getting fired. Hearing her story, I understood why Emily had ended up in such a state. We need to do something about this. Yes. I'm off tomorrow, so let's go talk to that colleague together. Is she still at the place where Brian works? I think so. Let's have Brian present and talk to her. If she continues to harass you, we'll file a complaint with the police. We need to handle this properly. Okay. And we'll get her to write a statement. If necessary, we'll mention how her actions forced you to keep changing jobs and disrupted your life. And ask for some compensation. Is that really necessary? If we don't handle this properly, it'll just keep happening. If she's reasonable, she'll comply with our demands. Emily nodded in agreement. The next day, as planned, we went to her workplace and got an apology and a written statement from her colleague. With the harassment stopped, Emily found a job as an office worker at a small company. Feeling more secure, she tried to leave, but I stopped her. Why don't you stay until you save up a bit more? Okay. Emily accepted my offer. Before I knew it, 3 months had passed since we started living together. Emily's smile had increased, and she was becoming healthier, which made me genuinely relieved. I began to wish our current life could continue forever. We started to become more relaxed with each other, and our relationship was somewhere between that of a married couple and siblings. But we were very close. Of course, it was a purely platonic relationship. Over time, I started to fall in love with Emily. I often found myself thinking about wanting to be with her. But our beginning was not normal. I didn't want Emily to think I let her stay for such purposes, and she was still 19, I wanted to cherish her. Then, an event occurred that marked the end of this life. One day, a man showed up at the apartment. He was a middle-aged man neither Emily nor I knew. Who are you? Emily. I finally found you. Ignoring my question, the man hugged Emily and started crying. Emily and I were both taken aback, wondering what was going on. I'm your father. I'm so glad you're safe. Claiming to be Emily's biological father, I let the man inside the apartment. His name was James. Apparently, he was the CEO of a company and quite wealthy, but when Emily's mother, Sarah, got pregnant, he was still technically married to his first wife. To the public, Emily was the child of an affair, an illegitimate child. However, he had been separated from his first wife for years before meeting Sarah, and they had been discussing divorce for a long time. His wife refused to divorce him because staying married allowed her to claim living expenses, medical bills, and leisure costs. Fearing retaliation if Sarah's existence was discovered by his first wife, James gave Sarah a large sum of money to buy a house and live quietly. After finally finalizing the divorce, he searched for Sarah and her child, only to find that Sarah had passed away and Emily was missing. I've been searching for you all this time, Emily. From now on, live with me. I won't let you suffer or struggle anymore. I'll make you happy." After saying what sounded like a proposal, James glared at me. "But who are you? Why did you bring Emily to such a small apartment?" "I'll call the police." "Wait a minute." Emily stopped James from yelling at me and started explaining everything. James listened seriously and started crying when he heard about Sarah's death. I see, it must have been tough. Seeing a grown man cry was quite surreal. "I'm sorry for yelling at you even though you are Emily's savior." "It's okay." He apologized again, and I told him it was fine. But now, Emily could live with her real father. With his wealth, she wouldn't have to struggle anymore and could be happy. "This is a small token of my gratitude for taking care of Emily," James said, taking out a thick wad of cash from his wallet. The amount was more than enough to cover the living and staying expenses, and it made me gulp. In truth, I didn't want the money. Living with Emily had been fulfilling, and it was something money couldn't replace. But if I didn't accept it, Emily couldn't move forward. So, I decided to accept the money. "Ray. Emily, thank you for all the meals. Be happy with your father." "Wait. You don't have to be poor anymore. Lean on your father and enjoy your life." Saying that, I ushered Emily and James out of the apartment. Emily kept calling my name until the last moment, but I convinced myself that this was for the best. If she stayed with me, a newly employed guy, Emily would remain poor. With James, she could give her mother a proper grave and live with her family. My first love doesn't matter. There's nothing happier than seeing the person you love smile with their family. Thinking that, I slid down the front door and sat on the floor. Even after Emily's voice faded and I couldn't sense her presence anymore, I couldn't stand up and stayed there for a while. After Emily left with James, my lonely life returned. The kitchen was rarely used, and the apartment felt dusty. Going to work alone and coming back to a dark, unlit apartment was a lifeless routine. My boss and colleagues noticed my lack of energy and expressed their concern. "Oh, I just caught a bit of a cold. Sorry." I tried to put on a brave face, but there was only one reason for my lack of motivation. I still couldn't forget Emily. Even though I had sent her away for her own happiness, and I thought I had made peace with it. One day, I took out the business card James had left and searched for his company online. A large headquarters building in the city center, with a number of employees far surpassing that of my company. It reinforced the feeling that we lived in different worlds, and the thought of wanting to see Emily again felt presumptuous. I decided to spend the day at work and go home on time. As I trudged back to my apartment, I sensed someone in front of the door and slowly lifted my head. "Emily? Ray." When I called her name, Emily ran towards me with tears in her eyes. "I can't forget the time we spent living together. Can I come back?" I felt a surge of happiness. I wanted to take her hand and say, "Let's live together." I can't. But I held back at the last moment. If I did that, I would be taking away Emily's chance of happiness. Emily was still 19 and needed her parents' support. Moreover, with her wealthy father, she could now live a life without any hardships. "Go back." "No. I want to be with you, Ray. Your father is finally able to live with you. You can have a comfortable life, so you shouldn't stay here with me. Is it really not okay?" Emily's tearful plea almost made me change my mind. I tried to close the door to block out her voice when I heard a man's voice behind her. "Wait." The voice came from behind Emily. It was James. "I want to talk to you." "Why?" "Let me in first, please." After a moment of hesitation, I invited them inside. I set the small folding table and took out some bottled water from the fridge. I placed 2 small bottles, one for Emily and one for James. Living alone, I don't have fancy glasses. Please excuse the simplicity. James glared at me. "Are you after my money? Is that why you were keeping my daughter?" "What? Absolutely not. Then why are you rejecting my daughter's request?" "It must be because you were after the money." His cold accusation made me a bit angry. Emily has had a hard life. She finally met her wealthy father, the CEO of a big company, and can now live happily as a family. I'm newly employed and, frankly, poor. It's obvious who she should live with. I blurted out everything and grabbed the bundle of cash I had shoved into the closet, shoving it back at James. Being accused of being money hungry snapped something inside me. Take this back. What are you? I don't need your money. I want Emily. I finally let my true feelings out. It's time to admit it, I love Emily. Ray. Emily, overwhelmed by my words, covered her mouth with her hands as tears streamed down her face. Ha! No matter what you say, nobody can resist the lure of money. James then made an unexpected proposal. If you promise to leave my daughter and never see her again, I'll give you $50 million. How about that? The offer was tempting. With $50 million, I could not only secure my future but also make my parents' lives easier. But I replied firmly, I refuse. I'm just a lowly office worker, and I'll never be able to give Emily such a large amount of money. However, if she chooses to be with me over a life of luxury, I want to honor that and stay with her until the end. I feel the same way. Emily interjected in a trembling voice. I'm used to living in poverty, and I don't mind it. More than anything, I want to live with you as your wife. Emily. Please, let me have your daughter. I promised to make her happy. Emily and I begged her father together. A heavy silence filled the room. It felt like several seconds, though it might have been only a few. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, James burst into laughter. Well said. Now I can trust you to take care of Emily. I'm sure Sarah would feel the same. He continued. To be honest, I doubted you when you accepted the money so easily back then. But now I see it was all for Emily's sake. Yes. The $50 million offer was a bluff. I don't actually have that much. I was worried about what I'd do if you accepted. Ha ha. James laughed again. I haven't been much of a father to her. I couldn't even be there during her most difficult times. I failed both her and Sarah. It's truly shameful. James. Ray. Yes. Please make her happy. And if it's not too much to ask, I'd like to give her away from our family home. Let me experience the joy of being a father. James asked me. Yes, I will. With James's approval, we became engaged, and when Emily turned 21, we had our wedding. The wedding ceremony was attended by my parents, relatives, James, his relatives, and our friends. It wasn't luxurious, but it was the most heartfelt ceremony we could have. At least let me do this. James bought back the house where Sarah and Emily had lived, had it renovated, and gave it to us as a gift. It was the only thing we accepted, wishing to start everything anew ourselves. When we stepped into that house after a long time, Emily must have felt her mother's warmth. She quietly wept. I couldn't help but embrace her and say, I'll never let you be alone again. Emily nodded softly, saying, Yes. Mom, this is my husband. We got married. I'm very happy now. Emily sat in front of her family photo and introduced me to her mother. I stood next to Emily and faced her mother's photo with nervousness. Nice to meet you, Mom. I promise to make your daughter happy, so please watch over us. I said, greeting her. Emily smiled warmly beside me.